Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the afternoon. Joining me, as always, to kick off this... It's a manic Monday, I would say. It's actually the manic Monday.
I'm perfectly calm. I don't know about everybody else. I am perfectly calm.
Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor. Man,
Bill, I appreciate, before we get into this, I appreciate the fact that you found yourself a orange Phillies hat to celebrate the Mitchkoff Phillies Day.
I got this one last year right when we got the job, and I wore it on our first day. I use it sparingly. I use this one for special occasions. Right. But honestly, this shirt was clean, and I was like, well, it matches. I got to go with it today. But yeah, it's a I'll tell you, man. I don't know. I think the majority of the Flyers fan base, like in general, can deal with a rebuild where like not a lot of shit happens. But left to their own devices, certain sections of this fan base lose their fucking mind. We almost need the actual, like, we handled Cutter Gauthier better than Alexei Kolosov, like, as a fan base. I honestly think
it was in some ways, yes. There also were multiple death threats sent to both Kevin Hayes and Cutter Gauthier, and fans went up to Boston to heckle the kid at a college game. So it depends on your definition of handling it well.
The death threats, listen, one, don't make death threats. Two, I just think like the anonymity of the internet, like you have to take every death threat seriously because, as you know, they said in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, it threatens death.
Actually, in fairness, I don't know if Kevin Hayes ever got death threats. It was more that it's a good thing your brother dies, and I hope you brother died, and I hope you OD too, like him, like really awful shit. I don't know if it was ever like I'm going to come down to St. Louis and kill you.
That might be even worse than a death threat because like awful. Chances are someone's not going to kill someone.
Yeah,
but like that's bad.
Yeah,
but like that's like one lunatic. I hope, but like I will say. And not to defend the craziest portion of this fan base, I will say that I believe the people who went up to Boston, there was already a fan trip planned, and it just happened to be some really bad times.
Or maybe they just live in Boston.
Or maybe they do because they had like
Flyers
shirts.
Fans everywhere.
They had like shirts on with like his silhouette, and it wasn't like a big X through it or anything. Like I do think that was, but all in all, I think, like, considering this dude just was like, fuck you, I'm not coming. We were like, oh, well, see ya. Sucks to be him, I guess. Wants to go play in anonymity for the Ducks. And then, like, this goalie that no one has ever seen play outside of, like, 120 minutes for the Phantoms last year. This is the biggest story in the world. Like, the fact that they came out of the draft with no 1C, no 1D. They came out of the offseason with none of the holes filled. Mishkov's here, okay. That is less of a big story than this.
But and this is something I do want to get into today.
This one,
it's not
third-string goal.
It really isn't that big of a story.
I know.
And this is something, as I said, I want to talk about. It's not that big unless you're in a very, very small subsection of Twitter. Like, this is not a national story because, and this is the key to the whole thing, this isn't even really a story yet.
Yes.
It's not. Like, it's the perfect story for Twitter.
Yes.
Because it's not actually a story yet, which allows for a lot of rumors and, you know, I won't say thinly sourced because I do believe that Tony Andrikaitis is a good reporter who doesn't just like make shit up. I'm sure he heard this from somebody who he trusts. But even if he heard it from somebody he trusts, it could be 3 stages removed from the actual player. Like, it could be someone the player talked to or someone the player talked to that person talked to and whatnot. So I don't believe that Tony made up this report that we'll talk about. But the way, like, the whole point of this, the whole point of the Alexei Kolosov situation, for those that are not aware, is it has been rumored basically since May that Alexei Kolosov, the Flyers, probably their top goalie prospect, depending upon how highly you view Igor Zavragin. But even if you view Zavragin very highly, it's going to take him 3+ years probably to get over here. So in here now, Kolosov is your top goalie prospect that actually could be part of like the near-term future. Sam Harrison is no longer a prospect anymore. He's an NHL goalie, so Kolosov's your top goalie prospect. It started coming out in May that Kolosov did not have the greatest experience when he came over because they signed him at the it was like the end of March, early April. They got him over for a little bit with the Phantoms, gotten a couple games in the regular season. Then he didn't play in the playoffs. From my understanding of the Flyers thing was that like that was always the plan. It was always he's going to get his feet wet, start to get an idea, like meet the coaches, things like that. But it's not like we're going to hand him the reins and have him play every game because he's probably not ready to do that anyway. Started coming out in May that Kolosov did not have the best time in the Philly, in the Allentown area. I guess that's where he was largely stationed. And the initial report came from, I believe, Belarus Hockey, because he is Belarusian, that he was not planning to come back. The Flyers, I remember I think I was in Barcelona when that went down. So I didn't do a ton of like initial like reaching out to sources and whatnot because I was on vacation. And also like I was significantly far behind on the time difference too. So it was like, okay, I'll just let the people who aren't on vacation deal with this. People like Kevin Kurz and Jordan Hall like got Flyers sources on the record saying we think it's going to be fine. When I got back, I started talking with people, and what I was able to garner about the situation is that he was definitely homesick when he was there. The Flyers have talked to him. It seems like everything has been smoothed out, that the Flyers believe Kolosov will be back for the first year the second year of his entry-level contract, because the first year was a loan. He was loaned back to the KHL. But he'll be back for his first year in North America, that the Flyers are working to make it so he is as comfortable as possible. They're proposing bringing over his girlfriend with him so he has someone to be around and live with and whatnot, and everything's going to be okay. Then around the draft, Elliot Friedman put in one of his like abbreviated 32 Thoughts columns, basically that there's rumblings that Kolosov might not come over. Again, talked to people around the Flyers. They seem pretty confident. Then he didn't come to development camp. And then you had the Freudian slip, Brent Flair, like, well, hopefully he comes. Oh, he's coming. Like, very clearly that there is concern that he might not come. And then this weekend, there was the Tony Andrikaitis report, which really didn't say anything that new. It just stirred this whole thing up again. But
quotes in it.
The point I'm making is the story here will be if Alexei Kolosov doesn't show up to camp. Until then, unless Kolosov, whether via his camp or via Belarus Hockey or via Dynamo Minsk, his KHL team, until he straight up says, I'm not coming over, the Flyers are operating under the assumption that he's under contract and he's going to come over. And we're not going to have a resolution to that unless he goes on the record and says, I ain't coming over or I am coming over, which he hasn't yet. We're not going to have a resolution to this until September. We're just not. So this is really like a story about a future story that we don't know about. We're not going to have any resolution to until September, which is why I'm saying it's the perfect Twitter story, because it's a story about rumors and reports, and no one wants to wait. So everyone just starts chattering and talking in circles and getting angry about something that, like, look, there's clearly smoke here. There's clearly smoke here. It's not like it is a certainty that Alexei Kolosov is coming over. But everybody will look very stupid if Alexei Kolosov shows up for rookie camp in early September and it's just like, well, he's here. So everybody spent 3 months yelling at each other for something that ended up not being a problem. Like, we just don't know. And we're not going to know until we get closer to rookie camp, which again is why I'm saying it's the perfect Twitter debate.
I guess, and we'll show, this was the initial thing that started all of this. So Tony Andrikaitis puts out this tweet.
What was this, Saturday?
July 27th. So yeah, Saturday. Per AHL source, Alexei Kolosov told Flyers at the end of his stint with Lehigh Valley, he did not want to return. And then he has a quote, which is unsourced, they put him in the hotel by himself, and he felt isolated, especially since his English isn't great. And then he goes on to say, explains the AHL deals for Gagan and Petruzzelli.
Yeah, because that was how this got started. Because
they signed two goalies.
Well, they haven't finalized this, but Tony is well sourced in the AHL world. If he says they signed or are going to sign these guys, I assume he's probably correct. And then I think he put that out there. People are like, well, what does this mean for Kolosov? And he's like, well, I talked to people around wherever, and there is probably concern, which I imagine is true, given all of the circumstantial and actual evidence we have, that like there is concern that he might not come over. That said, like this is none of this is really new aside from the hotel part. That is, and that's where we get into the zaniness of the weekend.
And I want to start with the goalie thing because it's something we talked about a couple of, maybe a few weeks ago. Last time we talked about Kolosov. It was, all right, so at the NHL level, we have Ersin and Fedotov. We know that. And Cal Peterson, he's buried in the AHL. We assume he's going to be at least like a tandem starter for the Phantoms. And it was probably going to be him and Kolosov down there. Now we don't know. And I was just like, well, then who is the third/fourth string goalie for this team? And you said they'll probably, bring in another journeyman AHL goalie. And it's like, well, that's kind of what Cal Peterson is at this point. And Gagan is who came up from Reading last year to play while Felix Sandstrom was up, while Cal Peterson was up. And he was actually, by the numbers, their best goalie last year.
He was,
now, that said, like the other two sucked. And then I have no idea who Petruzzelli is, but whatever. But if they are at least preparing, like, hey, we have these deals in a drawer for whenever something else, I don't know. That would lead you to believe they're a little skeptical about Kolosov's return.
I would agree. I would say that the circumstantial evidence implies that they are at least worried that he might not come back.
Also, Reading needs goalies too.
Reading needs goalies too. and Hagen has played in the CHL, so it's not like if Kolosov shows up that they don't have anywhere to put these guys.
Yes.
They will have spots in the ECHL. So that was
the hotel thing.
That was the Tony tweet. So Tony tweets out that, and unsurprisingly, people on Twitter who look, last week was a surprisingly busy week in Flyers world with the Michkov arrival and the Konechny contract. But for the most part, this is the dead part of the summer. People are looking for things to talk about. And this gave people something to talk about.
We are going to talk about a 47-year-old movie tomorrow, for instance.
We sure are. Gives people something to talk about. So the Twitterverse begins to chatter. And then at some point, I don't know if this was Saturday night or if it was Sunday, John Bailey, who writes for Philly Hockey Now, writes a story. It was more or less an aggregation story, and that is what John has to do. Like the Philly Hockey Now pays John Bailey by the clicks to basically publish a story a day on whatever is going on in Flyers world. This was a report, and I've met Tony multiple times. I trust that he's not making stuff up. He got this from I would assume to be a viable source. So John writes a story about the report from Tony. The thing that threw everyone into a tizzy is the headline of Flyers abandon Kolosov in a hotel. And
the Flyers are a gambling addict who left their kid in Atlantic City while they're playing the slots.
I'm sort of envisioning you leave your kid in the backseat of your car, that kind of thing. Yeah. But so the reason why that made it bigger, it was already a big thing on Twitter. And I do want to get into the Twitter aspect of this because it's an interesting part of it. But what John's story then did was then it brought in the names. Bill Meltzer immediately kind of was critical of John's article. I believe Bill spoke to someone in the Flyers organization that said the part of that initial tweet from Tony that they dispute is that they have not been the part of the tweet that Tony had was that the Flyers were told at the end of the AHL season that Kolosov is not coming back by Kolosov. The Flyers dispute that they were ever told that. They say that they were not told that wow. And this is what Bill and Jason Martinez talked about on Flyers Daily today, that they have not been straight up told by Kolosov that he is definitely coming, but they have not been told that he's not coming either. That that has never been directly communicated to them, and any report to the contrary is either false or, some type of whisper down the lane where somebody wasn't told something, even though someone has said something to somebody else. That's the stage of all this. And this was just 2 days of constant Twitter battling. I believe John Bailey responded on Twitter and basically he apologized to a degree, but it was more just like making his case as like, look, this is my job. My job is to talk about what everyone is talking about. I am reading this to be that the Flyers were negligent, and that is why I framed the story the way I did. I could be wrong that they were not negligent, but my interpretation of this is that the Flyers are negligent, and that's why I use the word abandoned. And like the way I look at it for John Bale, and like I know John, I don't know him super well, but like I know him. We both cover the team. He comes to practices and whatnot. I think he is completely within his right to interpret this situation in a very negative way. By the same token, the Flyers are very much within their rights to call him out and say that that is a gross exaggeration of the severity of the situation. Like, look at the facts on the ground are, it seems like Kolosov did not feel good about his time in the Allentown area. So it is fair to write an op-ed style article saying that the Flyers screwed this up. My issue with it is that, like, let me put it this way. If Kolosov doesn't show up in September, if he bails on the Flyers, if he stays with Dynamo and, doesn't report and this becomes a whole thing in September, I will almost certainly write an article being critical of the Flyers and that, it's an extremely bad look and, maybe this was just an honest mistake and you didn't give him as much support. You didn't think he needed as much support as he ultimately did. But in the end, it's on you guys to support your players. And if you didn't, that is inherently a failure because this is a top prospect. My thing is that I'm not ready to write that story until I know that he's not coming. And I don't know because no one knows.
And this is, for me, this is a huge deal now. One, because like we have nothing else. And two, because we color everything with the Cutter Gauthier.
That is a big part,
like,
to be sure.
If your top or one of your two top prospects doesn't, 6 months ago get traded, it's like, well, this is just he's a goalie, he's Russian, Belarusian, like, okay, so it's
a one-time weird thing.
But having the two things happen,
coming on the heels of the Gauthier thing, obviously,
the two things color each other. So you go, okay, is this some sort of issue? Because even in the way I've interpreted the Gauthier situation is like, he wanted the red carpet rolled out for him, and they kind of just treated him like everyone else. And he was not down with that. Seeing how they're treating Michkov, it's like, they know how to do this. Like, he's throwing out the first pitch tonight, the media tour, they fly him over. They're doing everything possible. They're going to bring over his family. Like, something tells me they're going to give him a house or something, like they're going to figure out everything imaginable.
Sure seems like it.
They're going to figure out everything imaginable to make this dude's time as palatable as possible. Now, he is like the future of your franchise, and guys do get treated differently, but it's like, you understand that this is important. It probably maybe should have been a little more important with these two other guys, but we'll just never know the Cutter details. And
I think we'll probably learn it at some point, but it's going to take a while.
Yeah. And this thing it's not a situation that's actually happened yet.
Yeah, there has been no resolution. And this is
while the Flyers lie a lot, like they wake up and lie.
Everyone lies.
Every organization does and should, because while you're negotiating, the truth can only hurt you.
I don't think the Flyers lie more than any other GM and front office does.
I think they speak publicly more.
They might talk more.
We have more actual, but you said, and I was like, well, yeah, he's in the middle of a negotiation. Yeah. But like, there's no, but regardless, like, it won't matter until it matters, and then it'll matter a great deal.
Yeah.
But like you said, there has to be something to this because shit keeps happening. But that said, they are telling us he hasn't said, and like, there's a report that he has asked his team and his agent, Dynamo Minsk and his agent to be like, get me out of this. Get me out of this contract. And the Flyers, their public statement is that
contract.
has not happened yet.
He's under contract.
Like, if he's trying to get out of it, we don't know about it.
Yeah.
All right. But, like, man, it's just crazy it's unfolding this way with another guy so close to the other one.
I think where I'm at, and this is why I am so calm about this right now, is that, and this is a tweet that I made back when people on Twitter were freaking out about the idea that they were negotiating with Sean Walker because they wanted to see what his ask was from a contract. And my tweet, which is regularly posted in the Discord at PHLY because it is consistently a thing, is don't get mad about something until it actually happens. There will be more than enough time to be mad about a theorized outcome if that outcome ultimately plays out. You don't need to get a 2-month jump on it. And I think this isn't even me criticizing John specifically.
No.
But it is me criticizing the model of journalism or sports writing or whatever you want to call it that he has to write. Like, his job at PHLY Sports, at Philly Hockey now, is to produce content. Produce as much content as possible. He gets paid on clicks. It's how he keeps his job. So because that is the model, he has to put out articles like this where it's like, okay, well, people on Twitter are talking about it, so I'm going to make an article and it's going to drive clicks, and that's great. And I don't begrudge him that. That is his incentive. That's what he has to do. That's his job. I don't think that leads to rational discourse because we're then we're creating resolution for a story that everyone on some level knows is nowhere near being resolved. And it's the same thing that happens on Twitter where people start to convince themselves that something that hasn't happened yet has already happened, and therefore it is acceptable to get bonkers level mad about it, even though it hasn't happened yet. Now, is it possible that Alexei Kolosov does not show up in September, and then you have to really honestly evaluate whether there's a problem here with like, okay, well, now within 9 months, 2 top 10 prospects in the organization basically told the Flyers to go fuck themselves. Yeah. That will be something to legitimately explore and get angry about. My thing, and the reason why I find myself exceedingly calm about this, is that we're not there yet. We don't know. I don't even think the Flyers know if he's coming. No, like
my guess is they have no fucking clue.
It's very possible Alexei Kolosov has not yet made the final decision as to whether he is going to show up or whether he is going to escalate this and try to find his way out of a contract. So I am not ready to like write a big expose article or an article hypercritical on the Flyers. I might write that article in a month and a half, but I'm not ready to do it now. And this is why I'm saying, like, I'm not even necessarily criticizing John because his job is to do that. I just think that the sports writing, sports ecosystem would be much healthier if his job wasn't to do that.
Listen, I come from the world of irrational discourse, so I understand. But yeah, like, it's what leads to this sort of insanity every day. And, you know, sometimes
the 24-hour news cycle is not healthy for sports or politics or anything.
And
it's
that's why sometimes you just have to choose chill. You have to make a point to choose chill. Because between work, social media, life, the news, all of it, it's no wonder we're all collectively losing our freaking minds. Coors Light celebrates rising above and choosing a chill mindset. Why not turn a rain-out barbecue into a karaoke house party? Or after a tough loss, settle scores with an ice-cold peace offering. Make the choice to choose chill, then reach for a Coors Light because it's mountain cold refreshment. Listen, man, this team, we didn't worry about them this much when they were good, but somehow them being bad for this long has turned their season into a 12-month anxiety-inducing party.
I don't think it's just hockey. It's just the world.
Yeah,
this is
maybe
what
that's
the world
what it
has
is.
turned into.
But we've been doing this a long time, Charlie, and things aren't calming down. Things are getting crazier every day. And that's why sometimes I just need to choose chill. And there's no better way to chill than with an ice cold Coors Light. So whether you're freaking out about a goaltender who may or may not be here, the roster, camp battles we're going to get into in a little bit, you need to find the Blue Mountains in your fridge and enjoy a beer as cold as the Rockies. Because when everything surrounding your favorite hockey team is on fire, sometimes you just got to chill. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY hockey. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And while maybe you're looking for a place to enjoy an ice cold Coors Light. You're looking for somewhere to go get an ice cold Coors Light. There ain't no better place than Buffalo Wild Wings. And what day is the best day? Well, it's today. Come celebrate National Chicken Wing Day at Buffalo Wild Wings, where you can enjoy 6 free boneless or traditional wings with any $10 purchase. This offer is valid in stores all day today, July 29th, and they're currently offering some limited time flavors of Buffalo Ranch and Luau Barbecue. I just had the Blazin' while I was in the green room. Gargano had a few today. Absolutely outstanding as well. Download the app. Enjoy the Blazin' Rewards program. Buffalo Wild Wings. Let's go to a sports bar. Absolutely. Big fan of the B-Dubs. Glad to have them aboard.
B-Dubs, that's the nickname, right? Yeah.
Yes. Glad to have them aboard now. I will say, Charlie, like, I'm not freaking out about this. First of all, he's a goalie, so he's out of his mind. Like, there's only so much the Flyers can do about a goalie. They're all fucking nuts. You know, they thought they gave their franchise goalie $51 million, and it was like, nah, he's concerned with the universe. I don't know, man. He's stuck in an acid trip. Nothing we can do. They're all out of their goddamn minds. But, like, the thing that concerns me about this, if it does become an issue, is that this rebuild is based so much on vibes, culture, leadership, whatever the hell you want to call it. And for whatever reason, they did not have the culture in place to make this thing work. Now, maybe it all works out. And there is only so much you can do for a 21, 22-year-old kid joining a team at that point in the season where it's not like they're all starting together. Like they made the point on Flyers Daily. It's so hard to join a team at that point. It's not like they're trying to exclude him. It's just like these dudes have been together since the summer, and now they're pushing to get to the playoffs. Like that group is so tight-knit at that point. There's only so much you can do. It doesn't help that he doesn't speak much English, if any. He is going to be, I don't know about abandoned, if that's the right word. I think that might be a little sensationalistic, but he is going to be on his own. Like all adults or, young adults at that time are just like, okay, here you go. This is where you're living. This is your new life. Good luck. Like that happens to college kids. That happens to people moving out on their own for the first time. That's just the world. And so many things are compounded on top of that when you're a young prospect from another part of the world. But like they talked about on Flyers Daily, a lot of people were like, why is Dennis Gurianov even still here? Like wave him. It was like a big part of why he was still around after the trade and they weren't playing him. It was like he was hanging out with Fedotov. Yeah. Like that was an important part of his like kind of acquiring him. I just should they have had the foresight to have a little bit more in place to make the transition easier for Kolosov? Probably, right?
I think in retrospect they would probably acknowledge because regardless of whether he shows up or not in September,
something happened.
No, well, they've admitted it. They've admitted on the record that their understanding is that Kolosov was feeling homesick during that stretch. And I bet they would acknowledge that, they probably could have done a better job of making him feel comfortable. That said, and this is, again, part of why like I'm surprisingly chill about this. And I did not drink a Coors Light. I don't do that during the afternoon. But at night, maybe. Is because, like, I don't think you're wrong. And in the end, an organization justifiably is going to be judged on outcomes. And the outcome could prove to be bad. And the outcome could have at least been been driven by things the Flyers could have done but did not do. By the same token, I don't think it was unreasonable for the Flyers to think that Alexei Kolosov would be fine for like 3 weeks in a nice hotel that is attached to the arena.
That's the funny part about this is like abandon him in a hotel. Like to me, it's like
it's like a CD in the rough part of town.
When I went to cover the All-Star game a few years ago up at the AHL All-Star game up in Allentown, like I stayed at a Holiday Inn that was like off the beaten path because I was paying for it myself, and it was like $48 a night. That's not where they put him. They put him in the middle of downtown attached to the arena. And I think that part is, while like, is Allentown Manhattan? No, but there's enough to do. There's a few bars. It's not like he's just in the middle of nowhere by himself. It is a town.
I just think that the way the Flyers probably looked at it was, he's only going to be here for a few weeks. He's going to be like set up in a nice hotel. He's going to have practices and whatnot. Hopefully he falls in with some teammates. If he doesn't, like, and I don't want this to sound heartless, but like there's Skype, like I feel like a lot of us have been in situations for a week or two where like we weren't the happiest. And it's like, yeah, like you call your mom or like you get on a video call with your girlfriend. And like, again, could they have done more? Sure. But also like, I don't think it was like organizational malpractice for them to think that like, yeah, for a few weeks he'll be okay.
Do you think, well, first of all, did they get the kid a PlayStation or something? Like something that would bring the guys to his room, maybe. Like get him the brand new PS5, like hook him up with the college game day or whatever it is now. Like get him anyway. Do you think playing time at all has anything to do with this? Because when he signed his ELC, it was very much believed that, like, yeah, Fedotov's a lost cause. Now, that said, Carter Hart was here, and if everything goes according to plan with Carter Hart, there is basically no way for you to ever become the number one goalie of this organization unless you are Sorokin. Yeah, like unless you were going to come to the NHL and so badly outplay him down the line, there was basically no path for that. Like Carter Hart was here, even though Fedotov wasn't. You kind of just swap those two out, but he comes over, he starts 2 games. He is the backup for the playoffs, and Sandstrom was the scratch.
Right.
So it's not as if he's just like twiddling his thumbs in the press box and like doesn't speak any English, so he's alone by like he's on the bench. He's in the locker room. But do you think the idea of just maybe him being blocked, because it's like, well, Erson's got a deal. Fedotov just signed a pretty good NHL contract. I got to live in Allentown for 2-3 years?
I think that I understand why people are theorizing that. I just don't know.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't want to assume. I get why people are theorizing because it makes some sense. What I will say is that based on the people I've talked to with the Flyers, their plan was always that like they felt like he would benefit from a year in the AHL. Like that's part of the reason why I thought it was nuts when before we knew Fedotov was coming over, it was like, yeah, just bring Kolosov over and throw him in. He can't be any worse. I'm like, I don't even think they want him playing in the NHL like for a year. I don't think they're going to throw him in the middle of a playoff race when he comes over from Russia. Like that was always insane to me partially for that reason. So I think they always looked at it as he is still a prospect. He needs to get used to the North American style of play, the different types of shots you get in North America and whatnot. They always wanted to have him to have a year in the AHL, ideally, and then after a year, they were going to reassess the situation. Now, the Fedotov thing played out the way it did. I do not know if they were in contact with Kolosov to let him know that they were also trying to bring Fedotov over, or if they just went total radio silent because they didn't want it to get out at all, which is very possible given the delicate nature of that negotiation. I get it. I can't say one way or the other whether it had an impact. If it did, it would make sense that that's part of it. But what I also heard was that the Flyers, when they had the catch up with Kolosov in May, like when these rumors first really started to break, they basically told him like, we'll bring your girlfriend over for you this season. Like we'll bend over backwards for you. Like we're sorry that you didn't have a great time during those 3-ish weeks in Allentown. We will make sure that your first full season in North America, you have significantly more support. Is he holding it against the Flyers because they didn't support him for 3 weeks? I guess maybe. Or is he just like, yeah, I was miserable, and I know I'm not going to be that miserable this time because I'm going to have support, but also I just don't know if I want to play in North America now because I might just want to stay over in my home country. And you know what? If that's the case, like, fine. And I'm not like, I don't want to give this kid shit because it's hard. It's real hard to uproot your life at age 22 and go live in another country. And if your heart's not in it, then fair. It would be a bummer for the Flyers, but if your heart's not in it, fair. Now, could the Flyers have avoided that if they had given him more support? Maybe, or maybe not. Or maybe he would have came over with his girlfriend and they would have been like, man, this sucks.
Yeah. Maybe it's just like he doesn't, maybe no matter at what age or whatever, he just wouldn't like it. Like some people don't like certain things.
Yeah.
Maybe he just wouldn't like it here and would rather play in the KHL. That's something like unless you're talking to him directly, unless you are him, you can never really know that. But like it does suck. If that's just the case, like he came over, they gave him all the support in the world, and he's still just like, this ain't for me. That sucks for the organization simply because they get painted. Well, the Cutter Gauthier thing happened too, and now it's two of them.
Right.
Like, and then that's just totally unfair, but life's unfair.
Life's unfair.
How can we blame this on Anne LaPerriere? that's really my motive here.
Oh my God. No, another thing I do want to get into though about this is Twitter discourse. I do want to talk about this because I don't know this for sure. But I do have a feeling that John's framing of the Tony report in the like using the abandoned term and just the way that the article was written, it would not shock me if that was influenced by the most vocally negative people on Twitter. Because here, and like I've fallen into this trap on multiple occasions in my career.
I do it whenever I play in the show. I have to like take a step back and be like, well, wait a minute.
Yes, because as part of my job and also because I have like a little bit of, deranged side to myself, like we're all too online.
Oh yeah.
And if you don't pull back, you can convince yourself that like the online world is the entire world, both from a political standpoint, but in this case, from a fan base standpoint. You often have to take a step back and remember that Flyers Twitter is not the entirety of the Flyers fan base. In fact, it is a very small portion of the fan base. Now, for our show, it's a large portion of our show because we are an online focused show, but there are a lot of Flyers fans who are not regularly on Twitter. But even beyond that,
lucky bastard.
The subsection of Flyers fans on Twitter that are hyper negative and are chomping at the bit to interpret any news report in the most negative way possible about the Flyers. That is also actually a pretty small contingent. The thing is that they tweet all the time. And you can, because this has happened to me, and I'm not even specifically calling out that specific group right now, because that group has gone through like 4 different iterations during my time covering the team. Yeah. Like the people and the names change, but the mentality is the same. There's always going to be a group of people on Twitter, because the medium selects for it, who are going to be hyper negative and are going to be extremely online. They're going to tweet all the time. And that's just what they do. The names change, the faces change, but the mentality and the overarching group on that side, it's going to stay the same. It's not that large of a group, but because they tweet a lot and because they are very, very passionate in their opinion that the Flyers are a dumpster fire and everything is bad, because of that, if you are also online and you are reading everything they tweet, you can start to believe that that is the Flyers Twitter and Flyers fan base consensus interpretation of what happened. It's really not. And it's worth remembering and taking a step. Like when I start to think that like, God, Flyers Twitter drives me up the wall. You know, they're so negative. They're reactionary. They go crazy. I have to take a step back and be like, honestly, not really.
Choose chill.
It's like 10 people. It's just 10 people who tweet all the time. And because of that, they can monopolize the discussion. I'm not even saying that they are wrong in their interpretation. I'm just saying that if you spend a lot of time online, you can begin to think that that viewpoint is a lot more widespread than it actually is. And I wouldn't be surprised if John maybe fell into that trap a little bit. And again, this isn't me totally shitting on him either, because I've fallen into that trap too, where I started to think like, man, everyone hates this trade or everyone hates this signing. And then in reality, it's like there's a very large percentage of the Flyers fan base that is thrilled they re-signed Travis Konechny, because Travis Konechny is their favorite player and he's fun to watch, and they don't give a flying fuck about cap and the aging curve and what he's going to look like when he's 35 and what the timeline for contention is. They want to watch fun hockey.
They like Travis Konechny.
Travis Konechny is a fun hockey
for 9
player.
years.
He's a fun hockey player. I'm not saying that the hyper-negative crew is even necessarily wrong. I'm just saying that don't fall in a trap of believing that that is the Twitter and fan base consensus view of what is going on. It's not.
Before we do the next thing, I just want to, let's say the Gauthier and Kolosov situations, for the sake of this conversation, are exactly the same. Let's say it's just they didn't feel the love for whatever reason. Is it a good sign that the way they're rolling out this Mishkov thing, like, listen, that's good for them too. It's good for business. Like, hey, here's our star. Come see him. Throw out the first pitch tonight.
Yeah.
We're going to bring him through the airport in a Phillies hat. All this shit. Like, is it a sign that they've learned their lesson? Like, this is happening so rarely. Like, they could draft 100 more players over the next 10 years and, like, this doesn't happen again. But I will say, with amateur athletes now having more rights than ever, like NIL deals in college, guys looking at like, oh, I don't need to sign the team that drafted me. Fuck this. Stay in college. I'm making money. And like now, if even in the CHL in a couple of years, there's going to be a transfer agreement that like, yeah, man, you can go play NCAA hockey. Like after you age out of the CHL. So you ain't got to sign after you got drafted.
That's how Newman University wins all their like D3 titles.
Yes.
They get all former CHL players who didn't make it.
They're gonna these players are gonna have more and more options than ever, and they're gonna be more and more willing to like break tradition than ever. Like we're already kind of seeing that. The fact that they're doing this stuff with Michkov and like rolling out the red carpet, and they're gonna do so much to make his transition comfortable. Is that a good sign, I guess? Like, all right, if this was an organizational problem, they've learned their lesson, I guess. I want to look at this positively.
You would hope so, but also, I mean,
we don't know.
We don't know. And also ideally you want to have an organization that's strong enough where you don't need to make like one piece of advice. And it's one of those classic truisms, but it's always stuck with me because it's a good piece of advice that my grandfather gave me when I was a kid, which is that smart people learn from their own mistakes. Wise people learn from the mistakes of other people. And dumb people just don't learn from any of their mistakes. They just keep making the same freaking mistakes. But like a smart person makes a mistake and is like, I'm not going to do that again. And I do think the Flyers are run by smart people from an intelligence standpoint. But the truly wise, or in the hockey sense, the best GMs, they watch, like they'll watch what happened with this and be like, oh man, next time I have a 22-year-old Russian and I'm thinking about throwing him in the AHL, maybe in March, maybe I'm going to say, you know what? Maybe wait until next season. Maybe we don't have to rush you over for the final 3 weeks. But you know what I mean? Yeah. Like watch what mistakes other teams make and then be like, we ain't going to make that one. That would be the ideal.
While this probably wouldn't be ideal because he's not slide rule eligible, they already burned 1 year of the ELC on loan. If they think this is maybe just a maturity or homesickness issue, do you think there's any appetite whatsoever to be like, we'll loan you out another year?
If
you can stay and then we'll start again next year.
Maybe. I don't know if it's off the table. It obviously would be a disappointment for the Flyers, but if they have multiple conversations with him, I mean, really what the Flyers should be doing given the the smoke that's around this. Like, I don't know, like they got Ken Hodakov over in Russia. Fly Danny out to friggin' Belarus and just like sit down, get some translators, and just like hash it out and be like, what do you want to do? Like, is this a situation where you no longer want to be part of the Flyers organization, or is this a situation where you do want to be a part of the Flyers organization, you do want to take a run at the NHL, you just don't think you're emotionally ready yet? And if that's the case, if they talk about it and they agree, like, no, I want to make it as an NHL goalie, I'm just not there yet mentally, then maybe you can't rule out that possibility.
All right. We're talking about smart financial decisions and making a big life-changing switch. Maybe you're thinking you need to make a switch of your bank. We've all seen the news recently, and the big banks might not be quite as secure as you thought. Well, I'm here to tell you, you should think about switching from a bank to a credit union. And if you're going to do it, make that credit union TrueMark Financial. First thing you should know, switching from the bank to a credit union like TrueMark, super easy. And you can see the steps, everything you got to do. Just go to TrueMark.com/PHLY or drop by one of their dozens of locations here in the Philadelphia area. Lots of benefits to making the switch, but I think the thing that stands out the most is simply the ownership structure. Banks, they're for-profit institutions owned by shareholders, and they operate with the primary goal of generating profits for those shareholders. While credit unions are not-for-profit financial cooperatives owned by their members. And if you live or work in Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, or Philadelphia County, you're eligible to join. And member benefits include great rates, lower fees, and the personalized service. You can get great personalized service like financial advice and have access to advisors who provide personalized financial planning and expertise. And you can learn about goal setting for long-term financial security. And who doesn't need that? I know I sure as hell did. So TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA as an equal opportunity lender. For more information, visit TrueMark.com/PHLY. Now I got to tell you, man, I love my Shady Rays. I really do. I have a couple of pairs. I got them myself. And you got to get ready for all seasons with quality shades built to last, because our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank or the credit union. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. And they have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. I wear my Shady Rays every single day. I have my aviators out in the green room right now. I forgot to wear them in here so that I could wear them for the read, but I love Shady Rays, and one of the things I love about them is the lost or stolen protection. If your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by lost or broken replacements. If you don't love your shades, exchange for a new pair or return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with personal and fast support. And exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to ShadyRays.com and use code PHLY for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. ShadyRays.com, code PHLY. All right, just for those interested, in case you're of this mindset, I don't need to be doing advertisements for the Flyers, but a lot of people are interested in certain games on this schedule. I did, in fact, mention Cutter Gauthier's name a few times. Pre-sale for individual game tickets starts tomorrow at 10 a.m. General sale starts Wednesday at 10 a.m. Just wanted to pass this along. I got an email today about it. For anyone might be interested in such things. All right. One of the other things I just wanted to talk about today, just looking at this roster.
Okay.
We have said many times, like, this is the exact same team from last year. Mm-hmm. Last year, however, there were a couple of surprises, at least to break camp. They break camp with Bobby Brink on the roster and Emil Andrae. Andrae, it was more or less like the what juniors players get the tryout, but they were able to just send him back to the Phantoms rather than like the CHL. But it was basically just a tryout. Like, we like some of this guy's tools. Maybe he can do it. They gave him a look. ultimately sent him back to the AHL. Bobby Brink just had a really impressive camp.
Yeah.
Like he was
particularly really impressive second half of camp.
Yes.
Like, he came on in the second half and then just kept scoring.
His preseason was really good. He was like, if Tyson Forster was going to make this team, which we all thought from the beginning, like, oh, Forster's making it. Coach loves him. It was like, Brink's looked better, And how can we have the credibility of, oh, this is a competition, man. You're going to earn it. Well, he earned it. So if Forster's going to make it, Brink has to make it too. And Brink, for the first part of the season, until he really hit that rookie wall, I thought, like halfway through, looked really good. Those were surprises. Is there even room for surprises on the roster this year, Charlie? Like, is there any room? Like, I'm just thinking to start, who on the Flyers roster right now is vulnerable? Like a guy who might not get the playing time we're expecting or could even be waived or sent down. I have 2.5 names.
Okay, well, what are your names?
Zamula, I think.
Who they probably want to keep for Mitch.
Want to keep, but maybe could play less than we expect right now.
That's reasonable.
Brink, I think,
if he has a bad
camp,
yeah, could happen.
Might not start the team on the roster.
Could happen. I think he certainly has a leg up, and he certainly should be considered one of the like favorites. But if he has a Cam York-esque camp, they could send him down. There's
not a doubt in my mind he's one of the 9 best forwards on this roster, but we also know who the coach is. Yeah. It's like, earn it, kid.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, like, not to be waived or sent down, but maybe you're the 13th, 14th forward. Maybe Noah Cates. Maybe.
I think the coaches like him too much.
Just an outside chance if someone kicks the door down, but no, I don't think.
Yeah, I can't see that.
You don't even see him as potentially vulnerable?
No. Okay. I mean, he could potentially sit at times.
Potentially vulnerable, what does that even mean?
But I don't think there's any chance of him getting waived. Yeah, Brink and Zamula. Zamula is the interesting one because I would say that if there's going to be a surprise, I think it would come on the back end. Number one, because defensemen get injured. Like, look, the Flyers are hopeful and expecting that both Drysdale and Ristolainen will be ready and good to go for the start of camp. I think they probably have higher hopes on Drysdale just because he's already skating. He's good.
Sounds like he's pretty good to go.
The Risto thing was pretty serious, and they're hoping. And I think they are expecting, but like might be a little bit more like, we'll see. Hopefully it's fine. Hopefully it's fine. But my point is that you have 2 guys coming in on the defense core that had surgery in the summer. So we'll see. In addition, you just have guys that are closer. Like when at the end of the season, when we talked to Briere, I asked which guys were close. And he more or less said like not that many forwards. Like I think if Elliot Desnoyers hadn't like completely fallen off the map from an offensive scoring standpoint, he would be entering this camp with a real shot. Unfortunately, he didn't score much. He regressed. So it would take a bonkers level camp from him, I think, to push the door down and push his way in, or just a bunch of injuries. Whereas on defense, I think there are a lot of guys who they believe are NHL caliber. Like you have the blue line core that they projected in the NHL blue line core, fair. But you also have Ronnie Attard, who is no longer waiver exempt, who's going to be trying to push. I think if they waived him, I think he would clear. But there's a non-zero possibility that he could be claimed. It's low, but it exists. So he's going to be in the mix. Adam Ginning, they like. He's going to be in the mix. Hunter McDonald, they love. I think he's going to get some time in the AHL, but he did get time in the AHL at the end of last season.
Yes.
Looked pretty good from everything I've heard. If he has a great camp, given how much everybody in that organization seems to love him, hey, if he has a great camp, all bets are friggin' off. So he's in the mix. Andrae made the team last year. Yeah. So, like, if he has another great camp, he could be in the mix. So I would say that if there's going to be a surprise, it would be on defense. Eric Johnson is going to be the extra, most likely. But, like, let's say Zamula stinks in camp. I don't think they would waive him because of the Mitchkov factor.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they would just send him down to the minors, although that would give Kolosov somebody to be friends with if they did.
There you go.
That would solve that problem is if Kolosov shows up. I don't think they're going to do it because I think they like the idea. Because the thing with Zamula, why he's going to be important for Mitchkov is for 2 reasons. Number one, while he obviously speaks Russian fluently, his English is okay. So he can be like the translator to other people like in the room. Number two, Zamula is part of like the crew. Like, he is in the social crew. And that would allow kind of a bridge to get Michkov in the social crew too. So I don't think Zamula getting waived is on the table. But if he has a crap camp, I could see him starting camp as like the 8. Like, just not playing that much because Adert or Jennings or McDonald had a killer camp. And it's like, well, EJ's the 7, you're the 8, and we'll get you in a game here and there. When somebody gets hurt, you'll jump back in. But like, dude, you got outplayed. Sorry. I can see that.
This is just a side piece on this real quick. We mentioned like they got to get Michkov like involved into the social crew, like, or is our Farabee Company going to be taking him out to the bars and stuff? And someone tweeted us, it was like, you guys remember he's 19, right? It's like, listen,
come on, it's a professional.
The rules. Well, I don't think there's. Is it the best idea to be going out and getting him shit-faced every night? I think it is, but other people might disagree. There's not going to be some sort of raid on a bar that Matvei Michkov is like it's the poorhouse at Drexel. Like, that ain't going to happen. I'm to a place he's at with those guys.
All I'm saying is that I would say the vast majority of us, both of us on the show and the vast majority of people watching the show, maybe on a couple occasions, got into bars before they turned 21.
Yeah.
And none of us, most likely, hey, maybe there are a couple watching, none of us were professional athletes. I'm going to wager that if we found ways to do it, an actual NHL player with superstar potential will have no problem talking his way past the bouncer.
They did, however, shut down the key copying place where you got your fake IDs at 16th and Spring Garden. That's where me and all my friends went.
R.I.P.
I was from Battle Creek, Michigan. That was mine. Anyway, looking at the forwards, though, like, do you think Samu Tuomaala could surprise? Like, Massimo Rizzo, like, he's a man at least. Like, he's of age. I mean, it's not like he needs to develop or anything. Like, he is what he is in terms of physical.
Well, so like, that would probably be Rizzo and Tuomaala. Those are two. I don't think either of them are going to make a team.
Bowles, Eklund, some of these older guys.
Those guys could be.
Yeah.
But again, the thing is it's sort of like, who are they going to push out?
Exactly.
The fourth line looks pretty set.
We have 4 guys for the fourth line right now.
Yeah, I do think that those signings from Europe are going to be in the mix. I think both of them will probably play games to start in the 2024-2025 season. They'll both get looks. And they'll be in the mix. Like, when I do my pre-training camp breakdown, they will be guys who are like in the mix. So I usually break it down into different groups. But if you're talking about Tuomaala, because you just threw a lot of names at me. If you're talking about Tuomaala and Rizzo, those guys probably have to push out Brink. And I don't think they're going to push out Brink. Now, hey, you never know. Brink stinks in preseason, doesn't score a single point, is looking ineffective, and Rizzo just is like, man, this dude is having Brink's camp from last year. Then all bets are off. I'm just not expecting it because Brink was pretty good in the NHL this past year, and now he's a year older, hopefully a year stronger, hopefully a little bit quicker. And those guys, Tuomaala had a really great first like 2/3 of the season. Tailed off at the end. I think he probably just got worn down a little bit, played a lot of hockey, hadn't played a ton of hockey in the years before. I think he's going to have I think he's going to take a step forward this season, but I don't think they're going to rush him to the NHL. Rizzo is coming out of college. So, yes, it is theoretically possible that he shows up at camp and just kills it. I'm not expecting it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, who could fit the mold is what I'm looking for. And like Desnoyers, I think he would have to just go bonkers because of the step back he took.
Yeah.
But like Tuomaala up until I think they said on Flyers Daily today, he got hurt. Like there was just after the AHL All-Star break, he took a dip, but he was really good.
But yeah, I mean, you're look at the forward core they have. So you've got,
there's no spots.
They basically said, and I get it. I get where they're coming from. Like, Nick Deslauriers is going to be the bodyguard, professional best friend for Michkov. So he might not play every night, but he's making the team. They love Ryan Poehling. He's the 4C, if not more than that. Garnet Hathaway, they signed a year early to another 2-year extension, so he's on the team, obviously. And they really like Noah Cates. Like, there's your 4 players on the fourth line. I just don't know where, and I do think they like those Swedish guys they brought over, the guys from the SHL. I don't know where they play unless guys get hurt. And hey, if there are injuries, there can be injuries in camp. There can be injuries in preseason. You never know. But I just don't see where the spots are for forwards.
Before we get to the super chats, I want to thank all of the PHLY diehards out there. Very much appreciate your continued support. And I very much appreciate someone named Matthew who just threw out, I think he's shooting a shot with Kelly in the comments.
Hey,
so there you go. There he is. First time commenting. So, whatever. Good for you. Hopefully that works out.
We love when people tell Kelly how great she is.
We do.
She's great.
We do.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Super chats. Let's hit them. Got a few super chats to wrap up the show here. This one from Xenothium15. Charlie, I know you're trying to be polite, but John Bailey owes Tony an apology for sensationalizing his story for clicks. True or not? I don't think he owes him an apology.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone did anything too crazy.
Well, I mean, if you want them to be friends, then yeah, he should probably apologize because like Tony's probably going to hold it against John. And hey, you know what? I'm in no way, shape, or form wanting to get in the middle of a Twitter beef as not anything I want to do. I think
I don't think anyone did anything too out of line.
Yeah,
here.
I mean, did John? I don't agree with the way John framed the story, but I don't think it is a insane way to frame the story. I just think that it was a bit much. And John probably could have done a bit more background research before pumping out a story like that. But again, as I've said, his company is paying for him to write 400-word stories every day about what people are talking about. So that model breeds this type of conflict. It just does.
All right. Let's go to the next one here from Hockey Dentist 28. Hey, guys. Is there a strong possibility that if Fedotov can't adapt to the North American game, the Flyers will regret not prioritizing Kolosov's development? In other words, it kicks us in the ass. This is just something we've talked about a few times. Like, I thought maybe there was a chance, like, hey, through a few months this year, like, if it don't work out, like, well, we got Kolosov down there. But you have kind of said this year is what it is. It's Ersson and Fedotov, and then reassess next year. This was all with the idea of Kolosov getting at least, the tandem duties in the AHL, and then we'll see where everyone is after the season.
I don't even think it was tandem. I think he's going to be the number one. They don't give a shit about Cal Peterson.
I say tandem because, like, I don't know what they really care to make his workload. I guess if you're training him to be potentially a number one goalie, you want to see if he can handle it. You want to
get a lot of games. Yeah. They're not going to do what they did to Ersson in the NHL, and that's why you have Cal Peterson. But this was never going to be like a 1A, 1B thing. Okay. Kolosov was going to be the one.
He was going
Peterson
to start
was going to be the two.
Over half the games, and then we reassess later.
Yes.
Do you think if he doesn't come over, it's like, oh, maybe we paid a little too much attention to Fedotov? But like Fedotov's story is so ridiculous. Like, they had to do these things. I don't know that they didn't prioritize Coles. Like, they were going to play him a lot in the AHL this year. Like, I don't know that they didn't prioritize his development. They allowed him to stay over in the KHL last year so that he would play more because we had Cal Peterson. We had
Carter Hart.
Yeah, Carter Hart was still here. Felix Sandstrom. All these guys are under contract. Nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they're all gone, it's like, well, yeah, you're our number one in the AHL, and then we'll see. I don't know that they didn't prioritize his development. It's like, I don't know if they prioritized everything else enough, maybe. And I don't know that either.
Look, in the end, it's better to have more like darts to throw at the dartboard that is NHL goaltender development.
Yes.
And if they lose Kolosov for whatever reason, it's a bummer because he's a good prospect. He's not a like blue chip super duper goalie prospect, but he's a prospect who I believe if everything breaks right, he could have starting NHL goalie potential. I don't think he's one of the top 10 best goalie prospects in hockey, but he's a good goalie prospect. You don't want to lose those guys for nothing. Fedotov obviously is a little on the older side. So could it bite them if the way this plays out is that they kind of marginalize Kolosov to keep Fedotov happy, to get him over? Yeah, it could stink. But again, this goes back to what we said the entire first half of the show. I'm not ready to get angry about something that hasn't happened yet.
And there is just the possibility no matter what they did, he was just going to be like, I don't like it.
Maybe.
Like there's always a politics. I don't like it here. You know, like and there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
All right. These next one from him. Hope Briere considers trading for Line now. Line,
we talked about that on Friday,
this.
Yeah.
If
I don't know why this has anything to do with what we talked about today.
But he paid $279.
Sure. If you really want Patrick Line, then you hope that him, tripping on his way out of bed makes him change his mind and trade for Line. If you really want Patrick Line.
He paid $279 Canadian, which is I think we paid him money. So we answered the question. Listen, I would like to see it under the right circumstances. A 50% retention of salary and not a whole lot going back the other way. I don't know if that's what Waddell's looking to do in Columbus, but if that's the price, cool. Let's do it.
You personally are open to it.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to Logang. Been listening to y'all nearly every day at work. Really appreciate you guys entertaining this Illinois Flyers fan. You all got a new diehard. That's what we like to see. Go to allphly.com and be like Logang. Become a diehard. You get so
Logang.
much great Charlie
Logang
content.
is very smart.
Yeah, he's a wise man. He learned from other people's mistakes.
Could be a woman
or a
too.
woman.
We don't know.
That's possible. Let's go to JH, the final super chat of the day. New theory from the chat. I acknowledge that Charlie might not be evil gritty, but has anyone ever seen it, evil gritty and Kelly in the same room? Kelly, I have thrown this theory out there before.
Oh, you have?
And Kelly says, because she famously ran the Dan Carcillo's mustache account.
That was Facebook.
Yeah, on Facebook.
Right.
And she can't possibly do 2 parody accounts in one lifetime. That was enough.
It'd be a lot.
And she is like running Broad Street Hockey. She does this. She has a whole entire day job.
She has a whole full-time job in addition to this.
like,
I do not know how she would have the time to also run Evil Gritty. But yeah, I also think that given the amount of times I have vented to her about like the people who believe I'm Evil Gritty, I would find it difficult that she would be able to hold a straight face if she was Evil Gritty. When I am like, it's so annoying that they all think I'm Evil Gritty, whereas she knows deep down she's actually Evil Gritty. I think that is highly unlikely. If it's the case, though, man, she has a hell of a poker face.
There's a whole lot of edits that can happen from these last couple of sentences, though. I can't wait to see those. It makes him so mad. All right. That's it. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for hanging out. That's all the time we have for you today. If you haven't already, you got to hit that subscribe button. Follow us right here on YouTube. We're going to be back tomorrow and the whole rest of the week at 1 o'clock. Tomorrow is Reviews Day, Tuesday. So make sure if you haven't already, you've watched Slapshot. Now, of course, we have planned this like 4 other times, and the Flyers have done shit. So, hey, if they do stuff, subject to change. But as of right now, we're talking Slapshot. And if you haven't seen it yet, check out my interview with Dave Hansen up on our YouTube page. It was... Honestly, I don't care if you like it or not. I had a great fucking time.
Yeah, you had fun.
It was fun for me, and maybe other people click it and enjoy it. I don't care either way. But make sure you're following us on Twitter as well at PHLY_Flyers. And follow the podcast, PHLY Flyers, wherever you get those. All right, that'll do it for us. My name is Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. Until tomorrow, stay loose and sexy, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.